We're going to go back to the definition of idolater because I think it's essential to the comprehension of where someone is right now. It will offend the majority of Christians who think they're absolutely a Christian, and I'm saying in their heart, I can't take away their salvation. But if they're acting contrary to the truth, that's something that they'll have to answer to God through and by in conscience. And so the all we're trying to do is clarify actions of what people are doing and how they're conducting themselves. So what really is an idolater? Well, if you go into Webster's, which seems to be a little more clear, I've gone into a number of Webster's dictionaries. Most of them of the Webster's will go right to the fact that its root etymology is hired servant wages, and then it says see larceny, which is when we look at the word larceny, it's the felonious taking and carrying away of personal goods of another. Remember, a stranger, the opposite side of what we see. We're not a stranger in a sense to God, but we're a stranger in their world as foreigners and pilgrims. But it says the felonious taking and carrying away of the personal goods of another, we'll say the stranger, with the intent to convert them to the taker's use. So if you're using something that doesn't belong to you, but you're asking to take it by license, which why would you need a license for anything you're doing in the world of legal if it was yours? You wouldn't need license permission to use it because that would be a ridiculous concept. You don't need a license to be yourself. You definitely need a license to impersonate the title or impostor the title of someone else's authority or jurisdiction. So when we get involved in the idolatry or the world of idolatry of Satan, of course you would need this because they need to see this to know that you're operating in their system and willing to be surety for it. So it starts here with no picture and their signature, the signature of the legal officials, and then eventually the derivative that comes from this would be the driver's license with your signature and your picture. And now you're busted for larceny. That's why they take a bust picture of you. It's that simple. Will bother most people, and I hope I'm bothering you right now. I hope I'm hitting the nerve on the tooth. If I haven't offended you yet, then I'm going to keep trying on this because I'm mainly trying to reach people who are seeking truth and want to be part of God's people and don't want to be part of this crazy legal insanity that's out there right now. So unfortunately, sometimes you have to do as Jesus did and be very abrupt. When he saw the many changers in the temple, he wasn't pleased with them. So I'm not pleased with all the Christian supposed believers out there with all that money changing they're doing on in those temples that they shouldn't be in. And in fact, we're going to get further into this because we're going to go into what is truly an idolater beyond what we've already discussed. Well, it also comes from the word latron, Latron, which means a bandit, an outlaw. Now, interesting that the use of surnames related to judgments that were being laid down by judges, and they needed the surname in order to lay down the judgment. It was also used for the purpose, adding an addition to someone's name was also for the purpose of outlawry, to mark someone as an outlaw. So it's not a good label. It is a bad mark, and that's why those that sin or who conduct themselves in a debtor title, a surname title, a debtor, basically are shooting themselves or stabbing themselves over with many pains in that system, and therefore are the target, almost just like a doormat for evil. So we have to definitely take the scripture very seriously on this matter. Further, it says it's a worshiper of idols or images, one who pays divine honors to an image or representation of a god. Now we know that most of these surnames date back to lords who controlled them in the feud. So this also relates to, in idolatry, there was ancestor worship. And isn't it interesting that everybody's dressed in black, like some kind of funeral procession, summoning the dead, and then you come in there and you're there to pay your respects for the dead, for the use of that dead lord's name, that you can't even prove you have any entitlement to, other than by mere claim. And mere claim is not title in law. Just because you claim it doesn't mean it's yours. So it says, paying divine honors to an image or representation of a god, to any natural object as a deity. The idolater is not merely he who worships images, but he who gives his heart to something which is less than God. I ask people in a day, how much time do they spend worshiping God, their Father, versus worshiping in this system on money and spending their time involved in paying homage to these lords, these gods that controlled these surname titles that were placed out there by inducement for you just to take on. They needed a willing host. Unfortunately, the unwary are hosting the event of these people. So we go further on idolatry. It says the worship of idols or images made with hands. More generally, the paying or offering of divine honors to any created object. I ask you, is this not a created object that's made by man? We're going to deal further with this in the next video.